Hello, everybody. This is Rakesh Kumar. I'm glad you're here for joining the webinar. I think you'll find this exciting if you're a young professional, because I'm going to try to connect technical roadmaps and give you thoughts and ideas about how you can charge your career. So I'm a life fellow, as you can see, which means I'm an old person. I've been around in the industry a long time. In a couple of years, it'll be 50 years since I started in the industry. Worked at big companies, Motorola, Unisys, Cadence Design Systems. I've had a couple of startups myself, and I've consulted with over 20 startups. So I've got quite a broad experience in the industry. I have been a IEEE volunteer for a long time. I've been a solid state circuits society president. I'm in the technical activities Hall of Honor, and I've led technical activities efforts at 2 sections congresses in 2014 and 2017. Currently, I chair the IEEE Technical Roadmaps Committee, and also I chair the data-based ad hoc strategy committee that was appointed by the president. So let me give you an outline of what I want to talk about today. We will talk about a perspective on a typical industry young professional career. And I will use that as a base to then introduce to you to a term called product roadmaps. And then I will talk about how to connect those to IEEE technical roadmaps and give you my thoughts on how you can use those elements to charge your young professional career. And I'll give you a real case study. I'll tell you up front that I have used this process myself, and it has really helped my career. So I wanted to share those experiences with you and see if you could apply them to your career and give it a boost. So let's say you're a junior engineer just graduating out of school, and the first job you get assigned to be an assistant engineer, junior engineer, whatever title the company uses. Well, this chart gives you a little perspective on the ladder that you can expect to see. It's typical of the industry, where if you're there for a few years, you've got to perform well in your area of expertise, and that's fine. And if you do, you get promoted, you get a raise, and you get promoted to engineer and then senior engineer, and maybe 5 years have gone by, depending on your performance, how small the company is, how large it is, and so on and so forth. What also happens as you're progressing through these ranks, you get assigned the responsibilities of overseeing other engineers. So let's say you're a senior engineer, you might have the responsibility to hire or help hire a new engineer and then train them. So, inherently you're becoming a leader. And then if you do a good job, you get promoted and you become a group leader. And at that time, you generally have a dilemma, whether you want to go up the management side of things or do more and more management activities, or do you want to continue to be a technical contributor? The world needs technical contributors, and it's perfectly okay to go up this channel. On the left side, eventually becoming a CTO or the top level contributor. If decide to be a manager, then your goal is to get promoted every time, accomplish more goals, become department manager, director, VP, senior VP, whatever the titles are in your company. So what happens here is that this could happen. The first levels here happen in the first 5 to 10 years. And the success story I'm going to tell you, I think I was in the industry for about 5-7 years, I think, before I took on a leadership role to try to coordinate a roadmap. Well, that was a long time ago. And these days, companies do their roadmaps quite diligently. So as you're going up the ladder, so by the way, in the industry, the whole idea is you keep moving up the ladder, right? And in order to do that, you have to accomplish your goals and be more visible to upper management, and they recognize your capabilities. And so the whole idea is is upward related. In order to do that, you have to expand your horizon and do more than just your area of expertise. Now, that's less important on the left side of the ladder here than the right side, but it is important to do more than what you are trained to do in your particular area. So by the way, I also wanted to point out that although I'm showing you a split ladder between technical contributor and a management ladder, it is possible to go back and forth. And that happens all the time because those decisions and dilemmas are quite challenging at times. And you can be a project engineer and act as a section manager. You could be a department manager and still be a technical focused person. And at some point you can decide, no, this is not really for me. I want to go back here. And those are quite possible. Again, you got to build the relationships with your manager and your split level, and then you should be able to do things per your plan. One way to expand that horizon is to get involved in product roadmaps. And I'll tell you what they are. Other ways to do that, by the way, is to get involved in product management groups or program management, things that give you a broad perspective of what's happening at the company and the kind of contributions the company is looking for. So let me tell you a little bit about product roadmaps. So all companies, good companies anyway, do product roadmaps because it helps them bring together a plan of how they're going to introduce from where they are new products over time and bring together the different parts of the organization in order to consolidate efforts and be successful in their goals. So here's an example of AMD. Everybody's heard of AMD, I'm sure. They make CPU cores. This is a roadmap from 2019 to 2024. So that's a 5-year roadmap. That's actually longer than what I've seen at a lot of companies. Most companies will do maybe a 1.5-year roadmap, 6-month roadmap, 12-month roadmap, pretty short term. But whatever the roadmap, it lays out a plan. So here they talk about a technology that's going to be the fundamental base for a Zen 2, going to Zen 3, the transitioning to 6-nanometer technology, going to 5-nanometer, another step. So this one seems like it's using a platform of technology, plus they bring together architectural differences and map them into what the customers really need. So this is an example of a roadmap, a product roadmap. This is the next level detail of that. I'm not going to go through all the details, but again, it's mapping out the different generations of products. It's telling you where the applications are. It's in the server and high-end desktops and all the different families that they're going to have. And that's good. Now, so to summarize, what a product roadmap is doing is helping the company identify the performance, features, price, and other factors associated with different generations of their product. And it's trying to get the eventual goal here is for them to be competitive products that they can sell in the marketplace and enhance the revenue stream for the company and the profitability. A lot of times technologies are the foundation of this. And like I said, they bring together architecture and those features, but the technology like the silicon technology, the packaging, the number of pins, the package, and how it plays into the architecture, all of those things need to come together at the company, and it's quite a challenge. So the question you can ask is, where do they get the technology roadmap? How do they know what the silicon is going to be available in the time frame for their next product? They really go to the suppliers, and individual suppliers will have their own roadmaps, and they will obviously try to suck the company into their particular technical discipline, technical manufacturing area. And that's natural, right? Usually there is an internal resource that does that coordination, and it generally works out okay. And as I mentioned, it's used to coordinate the to production of competitive products at the company. Now, as I also mentioned, if you're a young professional at that company, you should try to get involved in the roadmaps. There'll be somebody that's coordinating the roadmap. You can reach out to them, you can work with them, you can provide them information that they need. And while you're doing that, you're learning more and about different areas in your company. And that's all a good thing. So that's the opportunity that I want to focus on. But before I go there, let me show you what we do for IEEE at IEEE. So as I mentioned, the companies are going to get the technical roadmap information from the suppliers. Well, what we do here is not get into the competitive space. We pull together experts from the industry that participate in what we call a pre-competitive state, and they share their thoughts on what's feasible, what's not feasible, and we lay out a roadmap that's 5, 10, 15 plus years out there. Why companies come to us is because we are an independent resource. We're unbiased. We're not trying to sell our own product to the company. And that's a value that we add to senior management at the companies. Even companies that have their own technology roadmaps, they come to IEEE to participate and get a better feeling for what's possible in the industry and how to make predictions of what technology will be available. We take care of multidisciplinary issues, global issues, and a consolidated approach. So what you'll see in the roadmaps is the identification of what technology elements, their trends, what they've been in the past, and what they're going to be in the future. And then the experts look together or work together as to what gaps exist, what technologies are, there are known solutions, and we know how to get there, but the solutions are just not there. Those we mark up in the yellow identifiers. And then there are technology areas that there are no known solutions, and those are colored red, and that helps bring together multiple pieces of the technology suppliers together to put our heads together to go solve those problems. And this approach, by the way, has been around in the industry for a long time. It was the precursor to what we'll show you as our first roadmap. It's been around since the early 90s, called the International Technology Roadmap for Semiconductors, ITRS. And that has now evolved to our first roadmap at IEEE, is the International Roadmap for Devices and Systems. So it tells people what semiconductor technology will be required, and I'll show you, is projected to be available in what time frame. I'll show you an example of what this comes from. By the way, you can go to roadmaps.ieee.org and get more details into each one of these roadmaps. Another released roadmap is related to packaging. It's called the Heterogeneous Integration Roadmap. There's 2020, 2021 versions of it. And that's very popular because a lot of the integration of technologies coming together in the packaging area is really driving the industry today, in addition to semiconductors. In the silicon carbide, gallium nitride space, we have the International Technology Roadmap for wide bandgap semiconductors. And the last one that's released is the Next Generation Network Roadmap. So all of these are available. You can look at them and get a feeling for what technologies to expect coming down the road. There are other roadmaps that are in the works. The one farthest along is ITRD, is the International Technology Roadmap of Power Electronics for Distributed Energy Systems. So all the way from generating new technologies, new energy generation, to the usage all the way down to the power in your cell phone. The power electronics that's required, that's covered in this roadmap. The next one is others under consideration are digital reality and blockchain. And further behind them are the IEEE Brain Initiative, is looking at doing a roadmap that brings together multiple technologies in solutions like, if you want to implant a chip in a brain, you have to optimize not only the circuit design, the process technology, the packaging technology, deep neural networks, signal processing, all kinds of different technology areas, all housed within IEEE, and this will show you how to bring them together. There are other initiatives within the IEEE Future Directions activity that are also considering roadmaps like smart lighting, telepresence, low Earth orbit satellites, public safety, and reliability. So stay tuned. Here's an example of what is in the IRDS. This is one of the figures. It shows you the technologies in all the way up to 2034 and what technology will be available, what they're called. There's obviously an issue in the industry where Intel might give them some technology name, and the foundry gives them a different name, and what technology is used. So we map out all those things, all the details of the technology details that are used in order to bring all this technology together. As you can see, a very complicated set of technologies that we're managing. Here is an example from the Heterogeneous Integration Roadmap, and this is where, this is actually from TSMC, showing 2D and 3D interconnects that stack multiple packages and allows you to stack a logic chip, a compute chip, a base die that then has a whole stack of dynamic memories. So very aggressive technologies that are in use today and will be coming in the future. So now let me switch gears to how you as a young professional can take advantage of some of these things. So let me give you an example of a company like Apple. Of course, they're shipping smartphones, but in there is a chip that they designed. A12 is using an example. The latest one, I believe, is going to be an A14. And in order to do this, there are multiple disciplines that need to come together: design, process, packaging, blah, blah, blah. Now, Apple is a design house. They're a fabless semiconductor. And so they will need people that have digital design capability, analog, RF, VLSI, microwave, and many other disciplines that need to come together. So if you're a student coming in and your expertise is in modeling, you may get placed in one of these groups. And that's okay. And like I said, for the career path, you got to do well. But my key messages to you is going to be expand your horizon to understand, get a better picture of what's happening at Apple. And that will help you progress quicker, faster up through the ranks. By the way, these disciplines, you got to be electrical, thermal, mechanical, all have to come together. And so let's look at, by the way, within the process area, at the factory that makes these chips. So TSMC, for instance, is a manufacturer for them. Within TSMC, there will be lithography experts, etch, implant, diffusion, connect, and interconnect, and lots of other disciplines. And within each discipline, there's many layers. So I'm just trying to simplify the path to give you a perspective that is important for you to understand. As I'm going to tell you, my career started as an ion implant engineer at Motorola, and I progressed to the point where I was doing roadmaps for the Unisys products at that time. So that's the story I'm going to tell you in a few minutes here. But what you got to do is try to expand your interest if you want to move up the chain, and you can use the roadmaps as a vehicle to do this. And getting ready for this, I came across this 1981 workshop that I attended, a very famous person, and what his basic message was, instead of being a short, fat designer, you got to be a tall, thin designer. And what this tells you is the same perspective that I'm trying to tell you is, instead of focusing on a narrow area in your discipline, try to get involved in a broader set of aspects and become this tall, thin designer. That's been my motivation throughout my career, and let me tell you, it works well. So, okay, let's By the way, in order to do this, you've got to figure out what around your own discipline area gets you excited and gets you in the zone. So the zone I define as you feel so good about that area that you don't mind spending extra time, 120%, 140% of your allocated time into that discipline. And think about your own career. If you're working on something you really love to do, time is no factor. You just keep doing it, right? Till you accomplish the goals that you're looking for. So here's my career. As I mentioned, I started off as an ion implant engineer almost 50 years ago. I did the first all ion implanted transistor at Motorola. I was doing the integration of the architecture. I was doing the device modeling. And, I was curious enough to know, so what happens with this transistor I'm building? What's the next product that I'm going to build? And who's going to build it? How are they going to ship it? What's the package it's going to go into? What's the application? And so all of those things I was starting to learn more and more. Those were not my core expertise areas. Got involved in program management. If we had to ship those, how are we going to do that? Like I said, the packaging. And my managers noticed that I had that broad perspective. I was good at what I was doing, and I kept getting promoted. And so that's the way the ladder works out in the industry. And by the way, I was feeling good because I was doing more. I was making more contributions. It was helping my career. At all points, I was looking at whatever I was doing and how that would help expand my resume is a key factor. So, eventually had to learn about expanding my technical skills. I was developing soft skills, leadership management skills, and ended up running the worldwide design services, one of the design services group at Cadence Design Services. And that's where I got a lot of my business experience. Left Cadence, became an entrepreneur, and as I mentioned, I've run 2 companies. I've consulted with 20 plus, wrote a book, and more recently, I've been teaching other students as to how to become entrepreneurs. And in all of this, by the way, I'd kind of given up my dream of being an IEEE fellow. I never thought I could be a society president. Well, that changed in the 2000s, and so here I am. I've been both of those situations. So I would consider that a good, successful career. Could I have done different things? Sure, but I don't have any regrets, okay? So what do you do with all this stuff? I think volunteering with IEEE has been very beneficial to me because it helps make connections, helps you get involved in different disciplines. If I need to expand into a different area, it's easy to get connected to somebody else that's a help. Okay, so the model I have is a very simple model. Let's say you have your core competency in your discipline area. And by the way, even if you're going to go up the left side of the career path ladder, I would advise you to do this because while the company needs your discipline, I think if you have a better feeling for adjacent areas, that the application of it and the packaging of it, whatever, right, the area that your expertise is, at least 1 or 2 areas. This also applies to managers, by the way. What you need to do is to have a good communication with your manager, have a good relationship, and also your skip level. 1 level up, 2 levels up. Now, that becomes a little tricky because you don't want to offend your immediate manager, but the visibility at the skip levels is extremely important in progressing up the ladder quicker, faster. So things that I got involved in, program management, multidisciplinary activities. As I mentioned, 7, 8 years into my career, there was no roadmap at that time at Burroughs Corporation. I took the lead. I was the lead of the technical group, and I pulled together the systems level people and different disciplines and helped pull together a roadmap. Let me tell you, that was a very rewarding experience, and I feel good about it looking back even today. I had to build relationships. orchestrated partnerships, and was very customer focused. And by the way, in my theme of entrepreneurship, that's a very, very important item to keep in mind. Throughout is trying to build soft skills. Sometimes there's training provided by the big companies, but you almost have to reach out. And in this day of online connections, you can do a lot of trading online, and that works well too. Applied entrepreneurial skills. So I didn't know I was doing this, but in my educator experience, what some of my students have told me is if you treat your manager as your customer. So I got to back up a second. So in the entrepreneurial world, the new way to do things is you got to understand the problem that the customer has and solve that problem. And if you solve the problem and communicate to them, you got a much better probability of success. So now in the industry, if you treat your manager as your customer, you have an opportunity to much better understand the scope of the task that he or she is asking you to do, and therefore deliver not just a simple, they ask you a question, you give them an answer, but you get a much broader scope of the answer that you give them, which helps your manager get promoted, and that helps you get promoted. So that's the way the industry works. And I think this is a cool technique that you can pick up. So to summarize, my recommendations are, you got to recognize what your strengths are and what your motivating factors are. Your technical strengths, your leadership, management, all of those things, and what motivates you to get you going into the zone. And once you know those things, you should strive to get breadth, expand your horizons. Get involved. If your company has a product roadmap team, get involved somehow. Get your force. Get invited to meetings, ask questions, give them answers in your expertise initially that they may not be getting. So there's many different ways to make that happen. And then, of course, you can volunteer to be participating in technical roadmaps. Now, one thing I failed to point out is the technical roadmaps generally have people that are very senior in their technical areas. They're VP level people on the management side, they're fellows, they're CTO level people. So for you to come in and get involved in one of the working groups may be a little bit challenging, but you can do this a couple different ways. You can get attached to a senior person as a volunteer, and you can go do their legwork initially, right? And you do a good job, you're going to get bigger responsibilities. So that's a very simple way to do this. We can also, so that's what I'm talking about here, be a mentor. It'll help you diversify your core area of expertise into adjacent areas. And we can start an intern program if you want to formalize your involvement with the technical roadmaps. That's certainly a possibility. And you got to strive to change the world. I think there's lots of opportunities out there, and you can do it. Give you an example from football, American football here, where the ball carrier sees a gap in the defense and is able to find that hole and go make things happen. He, in this case, is taking the initiative, finding the hole, and going and making things happen. And that's the kind of thing you have to do too. Roadmaps are a vehicle to do that, but it's going to be up to you. So you got to make to summarize, you got to make a commitment to enhance your career. You got to broaden your perspectives, get involved in product roadmaps at your company, technical roadmaps at IEEE, and reap the benefits of networking, career migration. The more you get involved with IEEE, the better opportunities you have. And I would say just do it. You can do it too. So thank you for your time, and hopefully I've sparked some interest in your minds, and your careers will blossom. So good luck in that. Thank you.
Rakesh, what if I'm not an engineer, but work in technology? What roles do you see where I can work on roadmaps?
Okay, so you're asking if you're not an engineer, but you do work in technology, what roles do I think you can play? Um, so, you know, not being an engineer is not a real limitation. And I think if you're a contributor in the technology space, let's say you're a technician or a non-engineer in lithography space, for instance, you can still learn from what's in the technical roadmap, and because it'll tell you what equipment's being used today, what's projected to be used in the future, and you can get yourself smarter to the next level. And you may know more than if you were an engineer. So I think that's really, I would consider, if you have the right motivation, leveraging what's available in roadmaps can really help boost your career.
I am not interested in a career in industry, but with government or a university. How can I contribute to roadmaps?
So it is true that what I described to you is really the industry career path. Some of this is useful if you're in the government. It depends on your role, but let's say you're working at DARPA and your role is to go figure out what new projects to fund. Then looking at the roadmaps is quite beneficial for you. And you can use that as a basis to get promoted even within a DARPA or an NSF, or NSF looks at what technologies and academic capabilities and projects to fund. So I think the roadmaps could be useful as a tool. If you get senior enough in those organizations, you could become participants in the development of the roadmap. So that's the end goal in this case. If you are an academic researcher, what I know people do is they use the roadmap kind of as a baseline for a vision of where the industry is going. Because if you're a researcher in a particular area, you have to find projects that have not been implemented today. So you're probably looking past 2025, 2035 area and work on a project that nobody has done yet, right? So that's what a researcher does and publishes papers in that space. And we would draw on that kind of an information through IEEE publications, as well as your participation in a roadmap. European agencies, EU has a lot of initiatives going on in roadmaps, as well as technology development areas, and of course funding that are parallel organizations like I mentioned in the United States. So you can get involved in those, and you would have very similar interactions with our roadmaps. In Japan, I know there are initiatives on a similar nature. I don't know the names off the top of my head, but government-sponsored agencies that look for funding research as well as new application areas. So I would say our roadmaps are international, and they offer opportunities for international folks to get involved also.
Talk about just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Please share then final thoughts on how one can get more involved.
Well, it depends on your particular situation. If you are a junior engineer, just do it means you got to expand your scope. You got to do more than in your own discipline. You got to do more in your adjacent areas. It involves in making presentations and good presentations and your accomplishments, and reaching out to people as to potential areas where there could be more involvement. If you are a 5-10 year professional, you probably already done some of this, but your goal then should be to go make more happen, right? Because if your career somehow is stagnating, you've been there 5-10 years and you're not making progress, then there's something that you're not doing right, which could be just related to managing, managing your manager, getting involved with your manager, getting involved with your company, or it may just not be the right company. So you have to assess your own situation. At some point, you've got to maybe have a mentor that can look at your particular situation and make suggestions and advice, but you have to take the initiative. That's what I mean by just do it.
This concludes the webinar by Rakesh Kumar, IEEE Life Fellow and IEEE Technical Roadmaps Committee Chair, on IEEE Technical Roadmaps, what they are and how to charge your young professional career or any career. Thank you.